The Wendigo is a monstrous spirit of Native American origin that possesses humans, causing them to have an intense, unnatural desire for human flesh. Particularly found in the areas with a cold climate and large stretches of wilderness, these spirits take advantage of humans' natural survival instincts and prey on the fear and desire for food. This makes them especially effective in the cold winters of the Great Lakes region of the United States and Nova Scotia in Canada, where food was scarce for those living off the land in the freezing winter months. Today, the Wendigo mainly targets campers and lost hikers, causing them to murder and devour the others in their group. According to legend, it is nearly impossible to escape a Wendigo. Motivated by a never-ending hunger and aided by supernatural speed, these spirits will stop at nothing to possess their next victim. In this video, we will look at 3 true stories that are believed to have been caused by these evil spirits. Links to my sources will be in the description. For just over 40 years in the 1600s, a group of French missionaries of the Jesuit order traveled through New France, which is now parts of Quebec and the northeastern U.S. On this mission, the priests interacted with many indigenous people, hoping to spread Catholicism. In one passage of their book, The Jesuit Relations, they described the ill fate that befell a group of men they were supposed to meet. Reportedly, they had been overcome with a mysterious psychosis, which they described in detail. They become so ravenous for human flesh that they pounce upon women, children, and even upon men like veritable werewolves and devour them voraciously, without being able to appease their glut or their appetite. Ever seeking fresh prey, and the more greedily, the more they eat. The afflicted men had to be executed, as this was the only way to cure their condition. This is one of the first Western accounts of Wendigo psychosis in action. Born in Alberta, Canada, Swift Runner was a popular man in the Cree community and a father of 6 children. At over 180 centimeters, or 6 feet tall, he was a giant of a man and made a living as a trapper and a guide for the Northwest Mounted Police. But over time, Swift Runner developed a taste for whiskey and fell into the throes of alcoholism. Swift Runner was an angry drunk, and his drinking habits got him into trouble. First, he was fired by the police force, and then was kicked out of his tribe due to his violent tendencies. Then, in the winter of 1878, Swift Runner took his family, his wife, 6 children, his mother-in-law, and brother, out into the forest. Several months later, as spring rolled around, Swift Runner staggered out of the woods and into a nearby Catholic mission. When the priest asked what was wrong, Swift Runner said his entire family was dead. During the winter, he hadn't been able to find enough food. Slowly but surely, all his relatives had starved to death. The priests were somewhat suspicious, however. Swift Runner looked pretty healthy. Why hadn't he succumbed to starvation? Plus, they knew quite a few of other Cree who'd had a pretty successful winter hunting-wise. The priests were also disturbed by Swift Runner's constant nightmares. The man would wake up in the middle of the night screaming at the top of his lungs. The last straw was when Swift Runner tried to lead a group of children out into the woods. Convinced he had killed his family, the priest went to the authorities. The police put Swift Runner under arrest and ordered the big man to lead them to his winter campsite. Now, sources disagree on exactly what happened next. Some say Swift Runner immediately took them to the spot. Others say he intentionally tried to mislead them, only cooperating after he was drunk. Either way, when the group eventually stumbled on the campsite, they found a truly horrifying scene. There were bones everywhere, some broken in half and hollowed out. That could only mean one thing. Someone had snapped them open and sucked out the marrow. Their suspicions were confirmed when they found a pot full of human fat. According to Swift Runner, he had been possessed by an evil spirit. That's when he'd murdered and eaten his entire family. When Swift Runner went to trial in 1879, the jury didn't buy his supernatural tale, and after 20 minutes of deliberation, they sentenced him to death. Swift Runner was eventually executed on December 20th, 1879, making him the first man legally hanged in Alberta, Canada. At 12:01 p.m. on July 30th, 2008, Tim McLean was returning home after working at a fair in Edmonton. He departed Edmonton on board a Greyhound bus to Winnipeg. He sat at the back of the bus. At 6:55 p.m., the bus departed from a stop in Manitoba with a new passenger, Vince Lee. Lee, described as a tall man in his 40s with a shaved head and sunglasses, originally sat near the front of the bus, but eventually moved his way to the back, sitting next to McLean. McLean fell asleep with his head against the window and headphones covering his ears. According to witnesses, McLean was sleeping with his headphones on when the man sitting next to him suddenly produced a large knife and began stabbing him in the neck and chest. After the attack began, the bus driver pulled to the side of the road, and he and all the other passengers fled the vehicle. The driver and 2 other men made an attempt to rescue McLean, but were chased away by Lee, who slashed at them from behind the locked doors. Lee ultimately decapitated McLean and displayed his severed head to those standing outside the bus. Then he returned to McLean's body and began severing other parts and consuming some of McLean's flesh. At 8:30 p.m., the Royal Canadian Mounted Police arrived to find the suspect still on board the bus, being prevented from escaping by another passenger, the bus driver, and a truck driver, who had provided a crowbar and a hammer as weapons. The other passengers were huddled at the side of the road, some of them crying and vomiting. As the suspect had earlier attempted to escape the vehicle by driving the bus away, the driver had engaged the emergency system, rendering the vehicle inoperable. Witnesses had observed the suspect stabbing and cutting McLean's body and carrying McLean's severed head. By 9 p.m., police were in a standoff with the suspect and had summoned special negotiators and a heavily armed team. The suspect alternately placed the length of the bus, eating parts of the body. At 1:30 a.m., the suspect attempted to escape from the bus by breaking through a window. The police arrested Lee soon afterward. He was shot with a taser twice, handcuffed, and placed in the back of a police cruiser. Parts of the victim's body, placed in plastic bags, were retrieved from the bus, while his ear, nose, and tongue were found in Lee's pockets. The victim's eyes and a part of his heart were never recovered and are presumed to have been eaten by Lee.